Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our very first hybrid style luncheon. Thank you to those that are joining us today at Eddie Dean's, and thank you for those joining us virtually. We definitely have done a lot of firsts this year, so why not add another one to the books? Today's sponsor is Mooring Construction and Restoration, a longtime supporter of Boma Greater Dallas. Ashley Muscat is here today, and you'll hear from her in just a few minutes. So thank you to Ashley and Mooring Construction and Restoration for their support in this event and joining us today. I'd also like to recognize our official sponsors, the group that helps make events like this happen. Cornerstone partners are April Building Services, AMST Elevator Interiors, Interstate Restoration, Land Care, and Mooring Construction and Restoration. Our Keystone partners are America's Corporate Building Maintenance, Blackman Mooring and BMS CAT, Britain Building Maintenance, CertaPro Painters of Far North Texas, Citywide Building Services, Flynn Companies, Property Paving, Reef Parking, Texas Roof Management, and United Mechanical. Foundation partners are 5 ABM, Empire Roofing, Facility Solutions Group, Night Restoration Services, Select Commercial Services, Sun Commercial Roofs, and United Protective Services. Thank you to our allied companies that participate in our official sponsorship program. We truly value your support and partnerships. So thank you guys very much. Before I talk to you about upcoming events, I wanted to let you know about the application periods that are going on right now. We have the scholarship application period, which ends on October 31st. So if you're interested in gaining your industry designation or engaging in continuing education, you might be eligible for a scholarship. So head to our website to apply for an application or to find out more information. The other thing that's going on is our Lone Star nominations. This ends October 31st as well. The Boma Greater Dallas Lone Star Awards honors the persons in our industry who demonstrates the highest level of professionalism. Nominate someone from your company who exemplifies the best of the best in their everyday job. Make sure your team gets recognized for all of their hard work throughout the year. Visit the Boma Greater Dallas website to apply now. In a joint effort, Boma Greater Dallas and Boma Fort Worth will issue its 2020 salary survey this month. We encourage every real estate member to take a few minutes to complete this survey early as it ends mid-November. As an added bonus to the participants, each member who completes the survey will receive a free copy of the results. You will also be invited to a participant-only webinar where Redux, our researcher, will explain the final results. Don't miss out on this opportunity to gain insight on our salaries and our industry. As we continue to navigate through this pandemic, I wanted to let you all know that we'll be doing more hybrid style events. So just keep that in mind as you register for events, as there might be a different registration page for that. As most of you know by now, the 2020 Boma Greater Dallas Innovates Trade Show has been rescheduled for October 28, 2021. The trade show committee worked tirelessly to make sure that this show could happen this year, but due to safety concerns, the committee and the board of directors decided to reschedule it. So mark your calendars now for October 28, 2021 for the Boma Greater Dallas Innovates Trade Show. The awards and gala committees are joining forces in January to put on a joint event encompassing both the awards ceremony and the foundation gala. This one-of-a-kind event is set to take place on January 30th, 2021. It's sure to be a fun and eventful event. So sponsorships for this event are on sale now, so just head over to the website and sign up. The Boma Greater Dallas Medical Office Building Committee is hosting a virtual MOB seminar on November 11th. If you're in the healthcare real estate arena, this event's for you. Topics to be discussed will be the state of the healthcare market weathering a perfect storm, joint commission changes that every healthcare MOB owner should know, and healthcare development in an uncertain world. Head over to bomadallas.org to register now. Our quarterly principal member event will be held on November 12th. We hope that each of our principal members will join us for breakfast as we hear from Dr. Michael Gao, CEO and Medical Director of Haven Diagnostics, where he will help us understand and know how to communicate COVID risk mitigations that will help increase building occupancy. Watch your email for more details, along with your personal invite in the coming weeks. The annual holiday toy drive will kick off next week, and it's going to look a little different this year. We're setting up a toy registry on walmart.com. Think wedding, baby shower registry, where you have a list that all you have to do is just choose what fits your budget, and easy as that. So head over to our website to check out the link. Now on to our main event. Whether you're here in person or joining us online, you can ask your questions by just putting them in the chat box, even during the presentation, because we have a representative from Lock Lord that will answer your questions right away. Now I'd like to introduce today's luncheon sponsor, Ashley Muscat with Mooring Construction and Restoration. Ashley will be introducing our featured speaker. Hi, Ashley, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Muscat. I represent Mooring Construction and Restoration. Mooring provides emergency services, construction, and restoration both locally and nationally. We have the ability and resources to mitigate both large and small scale. Our main focus at Mooring is customer service and getting you and your tenants back up to full operation after enduring an emergency. Most important, we understand communication is key. And this is why we take a very hands-on approach from the beginning of your project all the way through completion. We at Mooring not only care about the completion of your job with passion, we also take great pride in being able to serve you during your time of need. I'd like to now introduce the featured speaker of today's luncheon, Neff Partida with Lock Lord. Neff is a public policy advisor at Lock Lord, where he provides strategic counsel and tactical guidance in the public affairs sector to corporations, NGOs, PACs, and numerous federal, state, and city elected officials. He has used his skills to help clients shape both public debates on key issues, such as disruptive digital technologies, energy, healthcare, and finance. His experience includes public affairs, continuing development, coalition, and grassroots lobbying, and teaching political campaigns. Neff has served on the strategy team for a number of congressional, state, and city campaigns and referendums, which has allowed him to build an extensive network of contacts in the political circles. Neff is joining us today to give us insight in the current political landscape as we approach Election Day. Welcome, Neff. I'll hand it over to you now.
Today we have our Texas BOMA lobbyist, Neff Partida. He's our Senior Public Policy Advisor with Lock Lord. And I'm so pleased that he's able to speak with us today about the upcoming election. Hi, Neff. Thank you for
joining us today. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. As Christine said, my name is Neff Partida with the lobby team at Lock Lord. A little bit about myself. I come from the political background. So for me, this is the most exciting time of the year because elections are happening. People are crunching numbers. We're seeing data all across the nation. And I'm going to give you a little secret. The only data I look at from a national level are the battleground states. And then I look at this Texas state because this is where I practice. Some of you that I see often know that I used to be in the campaign world. And that's before I joined Lock Lord. And now I'm full-time with Lock Lord doing their public policy. And I'm also their campaign guru when election cycle comes along. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, good. Well, thank you. And I look forward to what you have to say for us. So we'll go ahead and get your presentation up.
Okay, well, thank you for having me again. One thing to note before we start is what we're presenting here today is a snapshot of what if the election was today. And numbers will continue to change. Things will happen, events that we still haven't seen will occur. And so there's an uncertainty from now to election day of what can transpire. We just don't know. And as you've seen throughout the whole 2020 year, it seems like there's a new, more dramatic event as week goes by. So the numbers I'm sharing with you, every election analysis I'm sharing with you today, and just as we gear towards the general election November 3rd, these are all numbers based from October 5th through October 9th. So when we discuss this, it doesn't mean that it's going to occur. What it means is if the election were held this week, this is what it looks like. So as we move forward, that's just one little nugget I want you to take into consideration. This is what it looks right now. So right now, going in, there are 35 U.S. Senate seats. There are 53 Republicans, 45 Democrats, 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. The Democrats need to pick up 3 seats. Now, if Senator Kamala Harris happens to win vice presidency, then they will need 4 seats to win control. On the other chamber, the opposite, as we know, that's the Nancy Pelosi chamber. The speaker right now has governed 435 US House seats. There are 232 Democrats, 198 Republicans, and 1 Libertarian, and there are 4 vacancies, which the vacancies as we go forward, those are important. And the Republicans need to pick up 21 seats to win control. Now, going to the US Senate. Now, there are 45 seats held by Democrats that are either not up, they're safe, or they're staying likely Democrat. And now there are 43 seats that are held by the Republicans that are not up, they're safe, or staying likely Democrat. That's as of this week. Now there are 2 GOP seats, one in Arizona and one in Colorado. They're polling positive for the Democrat challengers. A lot of money is being pumped into those seats. Democrats feel that they can take them away from the GOP. There's 1 Democratic seat in Alabama that is polling positive for the Republican challenger, and it's very likely that the Republican will win that seat. Now, there are 6 GOP Senate seats that are considered toss-ups: Georgia, Iowa, Maine, Montana, North Carolina, and South Carolina. The Democrats do feel nationally that there's a wave coming. So there's a lot of money that we have never seen before in elections, that if you want to see where they're going, these are the races that all that money will be going to. As you can see here, here's the battleground map. You see the greatest state in the nation, that is Texas. Texas traditionally used to be the reddest state in the nation, solid red. People here took pride in that. Excuse me. However, now you see it's turning pink. Depending on what GOP consultants you'll talk to them, they will tell you that Texas is really purple now. And other GOP consultants will say the Democrats have the registration numbers, they just don't vote yet, so it's just a matter of time. Now, the big US Senate seat for us is Senator John Cornyn and MJ Hager. Now, Senator Cornyn is a widely known figure. One advantage that Senator Cornyn has over just about any other senator across the nation, I would be blunt to say that, his constituent services are second to none. If you just look at map of where he has all his offices, they are throughout the state of Texas: urban, suburban, rural, South Texas. I mean, he is everywhere. And what I can tell you from just people I talk to in the know, his staff is really good at helping the communities that they serve. So I give Senator Cornyn the lead on this. I don't think he will lose it. If you look from a primary standpoint to a general election, I think he's done a very good job mitigating his relationship with the president, his relationship with Mitch McConnell. And at the end of the day, what Senator John Cornyn has is that people like him. Even the Democrats like him, independents like him. So for him, it's just a matter of keeping the gas going, campaigning hard, continuing to do outreach to those areas in the state that other traditional Republicans haven't reached out to. If you notice, in South Texas and in some urban areas, he has Spanish TV up, doing Hispanic outreach. He's polling, the polls I've seen, he's polling very high with that group as opposed to other candidates in the GOP. So you might say, why is Texas now considered pink and or purple? This is, everybody can remember in 2018, this was the race that became a national race to watch. Senator Ted Cruz against Beto O'Rourke. What I would like you to do is look at that middle number, the 4.2 million and the 4 million. That is the highest turnout in midterm that we had seen. And there are a lot of young voters that came out that were energized then. And in my opinion, will come out again, because once you can get a person to vote once, it is a lot easier to get them to vote again. And then look at that far end to the right number, the 15.9 to the 48.2. If you were to tell me 2 years ago that that was going to be the breakdown of a state race and that the GOP would have a hard time crossing the 50%, I would tell you that you were wrong. But the wave came with Beto. He lit a spark that most people didn't understand what was going on. The credit that I will give the Aurora campaign was he did get on the road and visit every single county. The other side note that I will give you is uh, Ted Cruz favorability numbers were low at the time. He had a bruising battle, as you recall, the presidency race, as you recall what he did at the GOP convention. So there were a lot of people that did not vote in that race. They would traditionally vote in the GOP. So this is the race that put Texas on the map for all the national parties. Now, the US House, that is the battleground. I will tell you just a non-biased opinion that the tactician for the Democrats, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, too many people have estimated her. Very smart, very campaign smart, and she understands how to raise money and to govern. And what that has caused is now you look at the House, it's 232 Democrats, 198 Republicans. Just think about this. In 2010, I mean, it was reversed. And in fact, the GOP had way more races that they had won under a then Chairman Pete Sessions of the NRCC. So I look at the US competitive races, and I won't take too much of your time, but I want you to focus on this chart. To the far left are likely Democrat races that are competitive, and to the far right, they're the likely Republican races that are competitive. On the likely Democrats, you have two Republican races that are open that are already likely Democrat. Once you're in that likely Democrat column, you're pretty much guaranteed to win. And then you go lean Democrat again in Georgia, another open seat. And then you look at the Texas 23, that's Congressman Will Hurd out of San Antonio all the way to West Texas, that is open, that used to be a traditional Democrat and now looks like it's again leaning Democrat. And then the same goes for on the likely Republicans, you don't see any Democrats there. On the lean Republicans, you don't see any Democrats there. And then on the toss-ups, there are more seats that Republicans will have to defend on the toss-ups than the Democrats. So we come to the Texas races for Congress. So in 2018, again, with the Beto O'Rourke wave, came two districts that were traditionally held by the GOP. You had Lizzie Fletcher defeated John Culberson here in Houston, and then you had Colin Allred, which many of you probably followed, that defeated Congressman Pete Sessions in Congressional District 32. That raised a lot of flags for both parties, one positive, one negative. You had 6 Republican incumbents who won by less than 5%, which was Congressman Carter, Hurd, McCall, Marchant, Olson, and Roy. A few of those in that list have decided to retire instead of run again. The Texas delegation is 23 Republicans, 13 Democrats. There are 9 GOP congressional seats that are 2020 competitive races. And there are only 2 Democrat congressional seats that are 2020 competitive races. So here in Texas, the competitive races for Congress, and this will have a lot to do because in the future, I mean, you have congressional redistricting, you have local redistricting. So this is extremely important who wins. So we look at all the Republican districts. You have Congressman Hurd's seat. He's retiring, so it's an open seat. You have Congressman Marchant retiring, and that's in your neck of the woods with Beth Van Dyne, former mayor, and Candice Valenzuela, who has been, they've opened the wallet book. A lot of Democratic organizations believe they can take that. And all I can say is Beth Van Dyne has won in that area before, and she's a very formidable candidate. And if anyone can keep it, it would be her. Texas 21, you have Congressman Chip Roy versus Wendy Davis. Wendy Davis, former senator out of Fort Worth area. has around 3.5 million right now in the bank, more so than Chip, who's the incumbent. And I see that race being a toss-up as well. Texas 22 is in the Houston area. Again, Congressman Olson retiring, a lot of new minority votes in that district. So the Democrat has the lead, Cole Carney. Troy Nels does have the money to support from the national GOP party, but it's just the Democrats are trending towards the Democrat right now at this point in time. Texas 31, Congressman John Carter, I believe he will survive because he's campaigning as though he's 10 points behind. Texas 10, that's Congressman McCall. That's one of those districts that got redrawn 10 years ago to include Austin all the way to the Katy area and the Houston suburbs. And that area has grown dramatically, and the demographics have completely changed in that area. So then you have Texas 2, Dan Crenshaw, very popular. I would consider him a national rock star amongst GOP community and campaigners. And he's going to have a tough race just because his district is also evolving. Younger voters and older voters are moving out of that district. Then you have Congressman Ron Wright, which I believe they'll be okay. Van Taylor, which is in the Plano area, he won't have problems raising the money or writing a check. And it's just Collin County, that whole area, the Plano area, the Allen area. It's just, it has been so much growth. And with that kind of growth, you have younger single family households that tend to lean Democrat more so than Republican right now. And then you have Texas 25, Weatherford, South 2, Austin. You have Congressman Roger Williams against Julie Oliver. As of last week, the Democrats now are targeting that race because they feel they can take it, and they're fully funding Julie Oliver. From the Democrats, you only have two. One is in your backyard, that is Texas 32, Congressman Colin Allred, and then in Houston, Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. In my opinion, if the election were held today, they survive without a problem. So Texas statewide race to watch. There's not a lot of statewide action right now. And if you can say that the Senator Cornyn and MJ Hager race is a race to watch, but I think if you look at what the insiders are saying, what the polls are doing, Senator Cornyn should be fine. I mean, you have to see a 2008, 2010 style of Democrat wave, and then it was a GOP wave in order to even get Senator John Cornyn in trouble on election night. However, down the ballot as you move, there's this little known agency called the Railroad Commission of Texas. And the Railroad Commission doesn't regulate any railroads. They're an energy, oil, and gas regulatory body. And out of Dallas, you have Krista Castaneda. She's an oil and gas attorney, very qualified, knows the issues, and she understands the campaign and knows how to raise money. On the Republican side, you have Jim Wright. Jim Wright came out of nowhere. In January, no one knew who Jim Wright. He ran against an incumbent, Ryan Sinton, who was sitting there. Everybody, the insiders, the industry, there was no polling. Everybody thought Ryan Sinton was going to win. And little to the insiders, Jim Wright had been campaigning all West Texas, all the outsiders. He didn't go into the urban areas. And that was the biggest upset of the primary. What I can tell you right now is there's a belief that the GOP strong voter and the Democratic strong voter are almost even. So it is without straight ticket voting, who's going to continue to go down ballot after the presidential race, after the US Senate race, to get to this race. And that's why the Democrats feel they're doing a below the radar campaign, and they can feel that they can pick up the seat. If this seat goes to the Democrat, which is still tough for the Democrats, quite honestly. But if that goes, what you're going to see is what many of us saw in the 90s when the powers that be started changing from a Democratic state to a GOP state. So looking back at the history, why that race is important, if you look at the discrepancy between a Greg Abbott race, statewide race, versus a Ken Paxton race, 5%, Governor Abbott got 5% more votes than General Ken Paxton. And Justin Nelson, if you look at that, actually bet to increase that vote by 2 more, where the Senator Cruz stayed the same at 50%. So the theory is that as we continue to move election cycles, the younger voter is tending to vote Democrat. Single family households living in the suburbs are no longer a solid Republican vote. Things are just changing. And while we could say that those could have been the single family households living in the suburb, could have been your traditional Chamber of Commerce GOP Republican, well, that party no longer exists in Texas. And if you look at the national dynamics, even more so, that's being amplified that that party is no longer a GOP party, the Chamber of Commerce vote. So I look at the statewide elections and the historical numbers, and all I see is Democrats inching up and the GOP vote inching down. So at the House, and the House is really important. And when we look at BOMA issues and when we look at what we're pushing or what we're trying to make sure doesn't pass so it won't hurt BOMA and its associates, the House used to be all Republican, and you have a Republican speaker is no running for office. And then you had the Senate, it's all Republican, and then you had the governor that's Republican. So all the negotiations that used to be involved in any kind of policy debate once a month, the GOP. The Democrats believe that they can pick up the House. So right now, the House operates under 150 seats. That's the way the Constitution has it. Currently, there are 83 Republicans and 67 Democrats. So Democrats only need to pick up 12 seats, or Democrats picked up 12 seats in 2018, and they did very little now this election cycle. One of the hiccups that the Republican Party and the House members are facing right now is traditionally the Speaker of the House is in charge of raising money, distributing money to campaigns, making sure that he or she is campaigning for those members of his party. Well, as of this summer or before filing deadline, Speaker Dennis Bonnen just decided not to seek re-elections for reasons that were in the news. Now, there are 11 GOP incumbents in battleground districts. That means that they're in trouble. There are 7 GOP incumbents that are in competitive districts. That just means that they have to campaign harder than their Democrat opponent. And there are 4 GOP races in districts where voter wave can wipe them out. So you're looking at a dramatic pickup that the Democrats can have if that wave that I discussed earlier does come. On the Democrat side, they have 4 Democrat incumbents that are in battleground districts, very competitive. 2 Democratic incumbents are in competitive districts, meaning that they should win if they just campaign hard. So Texas Senates are a little different. There are 19 Republicans and 11 Democrats. The Democrats were able to pick up 2 seats in the DFW area in 2018. It takes 19 votes to bring a bill to the floor. Now, Lieutenant Governor Patrick Control is a little diminished somewhat, although he's a very powerful guy. If I look at policy, he has the sole power to decide whether a bill comes to be debated or not, whether it gets out of the Senate or not. He controls the Senate. Now, Democrats are expected to pick up Texas Senate District 19 out of San Antonio. That is currently being represented by GOP Senator Pete Flores, a good man, very aspirational, his door's always open. And the person who will take over that seat if everything goes well for him is State Representative Roland Gutierrez, who is his opponent. Roland had a major battle in the primary. There were a lot of wounds during that primary, I'll leave it that way, but it is my opinion that everything has been healed. He has all the support of the San Antonio delegation and the West Texas delegation amongst the Democrats. And unless something spectacular happens, he should be your next senator. And what that means to Lieutenant Governor is he won't have the 19 votes to bring a bill to the floor. So it wouldn't surprise me if the rules are changed and Lieutenant Governor decides to push a rule change so they can be just majority that brings up a bill to the Senate floor. So 2020 is all about President Donald J. Trump. We used to say, and there was a Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House, saying that all politics is local. Well, that ended in 2008. When President Obama got elected, all politics became national. And if you notice, Most candidates that are Republican, that are in tough races, they do not mention the president. They don't have any pictures with the president. And if you go and look at their website, nothing presidential is there compared to the primary races they ran. So what does all of this means to Texas? So during the midterm, that's during the Cruz Beto O'Rourke race, Republicans were wiped out in the suburbs because educated white women are abandoning the party. The electorate is becoming more diverse, and Republicans are currently unable to appeal to this new electorate because of national politics again. Now, if you think 2018 was bad, when President Trump was not on the ballot, uh, everybody should be worried about 2020 because he is on the ballot. And this election cycle is going to be a referendum on the president. And it doesn't matter if you're running, if you're a Democrat running for city council, for any seat, for dog catcher, it wouldn't surprise me if their strategy is to campaign against President Trump, because we've seen that strategy work in 2010 when every GOP person campaigned against President Obama and Speaker Pelosi. So I do see a wave coming to Texas. It's already here. We do not know whether it's a surge or if it's a tidal wave. And that's what has a lot of people crunching numbers, doing daily tracking polls, because they feel there's a wave coming. They just don't know the magnitude of it.
So that was very interesting, Neff. There's so much that you mentioned on this presentation that my mind was rolling rolling through. But let me go through a couple questions that we've already have received from our viewers. So one thing that I thought would be interesting for you to talk about is about the redistricting process, because we just, this was the census year, and I just remember you guys talking about it in our meeting, maybe it was in January, about the process, and I just didn't realize how long of a process it is. And but yeah, could you speak a little bit on that?
Sure. Redistricting occurs through the census. Every 10 years, the state has to redistrict the lines. Traditionally, at least since I can remember from the 90s, every single redistricting process has resulted in a lawsuit. So you could have some lines and they didn't get resolved till 8 years afterwards. And sometimes we have mid-session redistricting like we had in 2003, 2005 area, which we had never seen before until then. Before, it was always on your 10th year anniversary of the census. Now, right now, number one, what I would say is we still don't know when the census numbers are going to be available to the state because the information coming from the federal government keeps changing. So once the numbers come in, that's when you can commence the redistricting process. You have an idea, but those numbers are the ones that really matter, the ones that you actually get from the federal government, from the census. So what's going to happen is you're going to have competing plans. You're going to have a state Senate plan, redistricting plan, and you have a state House. So let's go under the scenario that the GOP keeps control. You have a GOP speaker, lieutenant governors are Republican, and then you have a governor is a Republican. You can really see whether it's during the regular session or if there's a special session just to devote to redistricting, how you can come out with a plan, you can pass it through the House, pass it through the Senate, send it over to the governors, they sign it, hey, we're done. If you guys want to get to lawsuits, go ahead. We've been through this before. Now, the tricky part comes where, what if the Democrats do take over the House? So now we have a Democrat Speaker of the House, a Republican Lieutenant Governor, and a Republican Governor. In my opinion, I don't see any redistricting plans happening because of that. So it goes to the redistricting board. And the redistricting board will still be controlled by the GOP because you have 5 members. And ours is the governor, lieutenant governor, I think it's the GLO, and one more in the Speaker of the House. I'll go back. So in that case, you're going to have maps. They may go to the court, but either way, whatever happens is you can assure yourself there'll be lawsuits, because we're not going to break tradition. In the last 30 years, every single redistricting map, whether it was all Democrat produced map or an all Republican produced map. All of them have gone to federal court.
So it's really important for us to fill out the census so that they can get actual numbers. And I don't know if people realize that. I mean, you don't see a lot of that promotion going on. You see a lot of promotion about what you're talking about earlier about voting local. Make that, not only do you need to be voting for the president and Senate at the federal level, but you should also be voting local because of what we've been seeing with COVID. Now we can see how much our local officials have on our lives.
And I like to tell people, and I've actually gone to schools to teach this to elementary kids. It's very simple. You have a pool of money that we send to federal government, whether it's through your taxes, your companies, your individual taxes, they go to the federal government. The census decides how much is coming back to your state for your services. And the census is going to decide how much power we have in Congress. Because right now we're going to be allotted 2 additional congressional seats. So we have to be dealing with that as well. But if we're down, maybe we missed 200,000 people, well, that's an additional congressional seat. So a lot has to do with power and with federal monies coming back to us instead of going to other states.
Very interesting. So the next question was about, what are you seeing that's going to be top priority legislation come in January as far as it goes for Texas? Anything that would relate to our industry?
Yes, I'll take it from a global BOMA perspective. So one is the liability issue. If you look across the nation, legislatures that were in session when all this was happening, they passed liability protection issues so companies can be protected, or rightfully so. If you're an essential worker and you need to go and work and that company has to open up because you're considered that, there has to be some kind of protections. I do believe that's going to be a governor's emergency item. And in fact, it would surprise me if it's not. So that would be one of the governor's emergency items, liability. Based on my discussions with Senator Bettencourt, and I've heard Representative Dustin Burrows, who was the chairman of Ways and Means last legislative session, regardless of who takes over the House, I think there's going to be discussions to clean up the property tax bill, whether it's dealing with deadlines, with, I guess, the powers of what is a natural disaster and what does actually mean. So from a BOMA perspective, I do see those 2 popping up that are going to be emergency items.
Very good. So what sort of impact, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but what is truly the impact that we could see if Texas were to really turn blue?
I think for now, I think there'll be gridlock from I guess, social bills or bills that are just either too left or too right. In my opinion, you're going to see a similar session to maybe under Speaker Dennis Bonnen, because even if the Democrats take over the House, it's going to be a very close House. So I would say the worker bees, the nuts and bolts of legislature, of making sure that the state is moving forward, those are the kinds of bills I'll see move. Anything dealing with either far right or far left issues, those are just going to be stopped. And what I'll tell you is, traditionally, any bill that maybe Bowman disagrees with, we're negotiating with a Republican House and a Republican Senate. So the negotiation is among Republicans itself. It's just, okay, how pro-business is it versus how pro-populist is it? Now it's going to be, okay, it's a Democrat speaker negotiating with a Republican lieutenant governor. So there's going to be a lot of dynamics that change, where we could see a session that is really just, let's go in, we're going to have a budget deficit, let's take care of budget. We know House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1 will be filed. Let's see what the comptroller says and how much monies we have and how much monies we need to function for the next 2 years. And then the rest is just going to be emergency items. What is it that we need to fix? Because we never thought we would be experiencing a pandemic.
So it'll be interesting. I think that, I mean, are we ever going to go, will they ever change the law so it's like they can go into legislation every year instead of every 2 years? I mean, yes, it's been through hundreds of years.
So every year that comes up, the bigger we get, the more it comes up, the more heavy issues that arise. And there's a philosophy in Texas, and you've been in Texas for a long time, is like, our way is the right way. And if you just take a step back, it allows us not to be reactionary. If you look at other states, when there's a tragedy happens, sometimes they overreact and they go and change all these laws that organizations such as yourself work 3 sessions to get them done, 6 years, some 10 years, and they're working, but it's overreaction. With this type of legislature, you really have 2 years to do a case study whether this legislation worked or not, or what amendments can we do, what minor tweaks can we do to make it even better. And I think that most government officials, most corporations believe that the way Texas has it works. And every now and then you have a crisis. No one saw a pandemic coming. I mean, that would be far off from anyone's mind. Maybe if you're the CDC, but we did it. And so those are 1 in 100 year events. So why change something that works for one event that's going to occur in 100 years? What I can tell you is the things that get more support about having yearly session is the budget. Maybe we should have at least during the interim, a 1-month budgeting session just to determine where we are with real numbers.
Yeah, great answer, by the way. That's such a great point. And I was kind of thinking about that back when, like a month ago, when we were seeing other states passing legislation about liability because of COVID. And so I thought about that it's good for us to kind of see how it's playing out for them, and then we can kind of see how we can. It's kind of like the second child syndrome, I call it, because I'm the baby and I always watched my older sister get in trouble, and I learned from that. So
you know better.
Exactly. So another question I had for you was about October surprises. I didn't realize that there was a term for this until I watched our CBS Sunday morning show last week, and they talked about how we may have already seen an October surprise, which for those that don't know, I think you already know, people know what that really means, and it relates to the election. For example, last election, 4 years ago, the FBI came out with a letter that found that Hillary Clinton had used personal emails to communicate, and found some other things, which was connected to her deputy chief of staff, Huma Abedin, and who was the wife of the former politician and convicted sex offender. So it was like this whole big domino effect that just landed right at the right time for Mr. Trump, for President Trump, that, it really changed the election. And so for us, yes, 2020 has been a crazy year, but it's like end of September, you had Ruth Bader Ginsburg pass away, and then that's a whole nother thing. And then you had the president catch COVID. So what do you have to say for that? Do you think we're going to have any more surprises?
I'm really glad you asked that question. And everybody that showed up today for this lunch, I'm going to tell you what the October surprise is going to be, as long as you don't tell anyone. The year 2020 is your October surprise. It seems like we've been in October surprise since February, end of February, from March to now. The political events and the personal events for each candidate that have occurred since then. We have 6 election cycles of October surprises, and the year is still not over, and the election's not over. I think there's more to come. I think the regular voter is jaded to October surprises because of the year that we're living in. It is the longest year. It's taken us 5 years to get to October, and it'll take another 3 years to get to November election. So what I'm saying is, like, to give you a case in point, as of Friday, October 9th, 24% of the vote in some areas, some areas of the early vote that already took place nationally equates to 24% of the total votes in certain areas through November. So turnout is going to be crazy. That's going to be an October surprise. What is the turnout models? In my opinion, another October surprise is going to be who actually voted. And we're going to be surprised at, I see the young people engaging because of the social media tools that are available out there. And the biggest, I think, concern with the apolitical, maybe they look at the system, maybe they just don't like Trump. Maybe they don't like, they may agree with his policies, they just don't like him, and they've never voted, and they're going to say, you know what, this is democracy. I'm hearing he's not going to resign peacefully, so they come out to vote. And that has an impact all the way down ballot. Even in Texas, that we took away straight ticket voting. People are getting more educated. The one thing I always cautious people, well, everybody says senior citizens get to vote. And my piece of advice, if you are in your 40s right now, next presidential election cycle, you will be considered a senior voter. So
Don't say that.
so people that were in the 40s in 2016, now you're a no voter now. And if you voted GOP in 2016, guess what? More than likely you're going to vote again for the GOP. But if you voted Democrat, now you're a senior that's voting Democrat. So I'm always careful with looking at those numbers because I mean, we work in 4 and 2 year cycles.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other interesting thing is like how the spectrum of our parties have changed. Like you said, it's changed. Like Bill Clinton he was a Democrat, but today he would be referred as a in the middle, really, right? So yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. Well, thank you so much, Neff, for taking the time to speak with us and having such a great conversation about this and just getting us ready for us to go out and see what the ballot's going to look like. And a lot of those names I'm going to see on my ballot for sure. And so it'll be very interesting. I always love to have you guys talk about this because it's like, okay, let's see what he was right. Check. So he got that one check. You guys just do such a great job. And
Thank you, Christine.
so thank you so much.
And I'll stay around and answer any questions online that anyone has. And I can tell all of you guys are in the hotbed of change in Texas. And when the Metroplex area goes, look at Collin County. If you want to look at Houston, for anyone that's interested in Houston, I know there's a rivalry between Houston and Dallas, but in Houston, it's funny how things are all the same. Is the Northern County, which is Montgomery County, the equivalent of what Collin County was 10 years ago to you guys. And the growth is crazy. And in my opinion, from a political campaign perspective, once Collin County goes blue and once Montgomery County goes blue, then the whole state is blue for a while.
Wow. Okay, you just blew my mind with that. I didn't think about that, how that's such a great parallel. And it is probably even happening with San Antonio and Austin, right? I mean, because with San Antonio, the in-between Austin and San Antonio, it's closely coming together, and it's like they're going to be their own metroplex coming up, and so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future as well. Well, good. Thank you. Not to keep on going, but I'm like, this is really great information, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much to Nev Partita for joining us today and giving us his insight on the current political landscape as we approach Election Day. And thank you again to Mooring Construction and Restoration for sponsoring this luncheon. That wraps it up. Thank you everyone for joining us. Don't forget our next luncheon will be November 17th, where we'll hear from Mark Dotzer. And the luncheon will be a hybrid style luncheon again. So make sure you check those pages before you sign up. Thanks again for joining us. And don't forget to vote. Thanks, guys.